The out-of-control plane crashed into the ground, and a massive cruise ship, also out of control, ran aground and rushed towards the crowd. In today's society, heavily reliant on high-tech products and the internet, imagine a scenario where there is a widespread network outage, everything around starts to become eerie, and once communication is cut off, fear gradually spreads among the crowd. Over the weekend, Amanda had a sudden idea, booked a villa by the sea in the outskirts, and embarked on a weekend vacation with her husband Clay and their children. After settling in, the family went to the beach to enjoy the sunshine. The daughter noticed a huge houseboat sailing in the sea, seemingly heading towards their beach. The adults didn't pay much attention, as the area had the world's largest natural harbor, and passing cargo ships were a common sight. The daughter reminded her mother again. Amanda looked up and was shocked to see that the giant ship was now just a step away from their beach. Seeing this, Amanda quickly led her family to escape, but in the blink of an eye, the massive ship crashed onto the beach. Police evacuated the tourists, citing a malfunction in the cruise ship's navigation system. Back at the villa, the family wanted to go online to find out what had happened. However, they discovered that both the internet and television signals were gone. The children seemed unaffected and continued to play happily in the swimming pool. At that moment, several deer appeared in the bushes. While Amanda was delighted, her husband saw the sighting as a symbol of good luck. In the middle of the night, George arrived at the villa with his daughter. The sudden appearance of strangers left the family in bewilderment. George explained that there was a sudden widespread power outage in New York City, and they couldn't return to their apartment. The rented villa belonged to George, so they reluctantly sought refuge there for the night. To apologize for the disturbance, George offered $1,000 as compensation, hoping to stay for the night. Amanda, however, was not willing to share the same house with strangers. This put her husband in a difficult position. Amanda wanted to call the rental company, but her phone had no signal, making it impossible to contact anyone. The issue of whether the father and daughter should stay or leave became a prolonged argument. Amanda was afraid that the sudden appearance of these two people might be suspicious. Clay, on the other hand, felt that they were the original owners of the villa, and the $1,000 was enough to cover their rent. After much discussion, the couple decided to talk to the father and daughter and let them stay for the night, with plans to reconsider the situation the next day. When Amanda asked to see their identification, George couldn't find it, claiming he may have lost it in the chaos. This raised Amanda's suspicion. Suddenly, an emergency alert came on the television, and George's daughter speculated that the widespread power outage might signify something even more significant. Clay judged that the father and daughter were not lying, so he agreed to let them stay temporarily, deciding to make plans the next day. However, when the two newcomers went to the basement guest room, the girls' words exposed their true identities. It turned out that Clay returned here not because he couldn't enter the apartment, but because someone had warned him to leave New York quickly. George is not sure about the specific reasons. After everyone has fallen asleep, the TV screen suddenly displays a news report: the entire North American network has been hacked, causing paralysis. The next morning, the daughter asked her mother to help her solve the network issue. At this point, Amanda noticed 4 messages on her phone, 2 of which were alerts about the power outage. When she handed the phone to her husband to show him the messages, they were all gone. The girl went outside for some fresh air and was surprised to see a group of wild deer running out of the bushes. When George woke up and heard the news alert from Amanda, he believed that this collapse was simply a result of a virus attack and should be resolved soon. George's daughter began to worry about her mother's safety. Her mother had taken a plane back to New York today, and there was no news from her now. Clay drove out of the town in hopes of finding a place with a signal. However, he encountered a woman who flagged him down, crying and claiming to have lost her job, begging Clay to take her in. Thinking she might be mentally disturbed, Clay drove away. Just then, a drone appeared on the road ahead. Terrified, he immediately turned around, but the vehicle was soon covered by the sprayed substance. On the other side, the girl talked to her brother about the paths in the woods, feeling like they were being warned by them. Shortly after, the siblings entered the woods and discovered a mysterious cabin. Strangely, there was a peculiar mark on the ground, as if someone had just escaped from there. Moreover, the cabin's window directly faced their villa, seemingly allowing someone to spy on their every move. Meanwhile, George arrived at a neighbor's house a few kilometers away. The room was in disarray, as if it had been ransacked by robbers. He found a satellite phone at home, but it still had no signal. George looked puzzled. He came to the beach in front of the villa and unexpectedly found a wristwatch. He approached to take a look and was horrified. After coming to his senses, he realized that the entire beach was littered with corpses, and there was wreckage of a plane nearby, indicating a plane crash had occurred. Before he could recover from the shock, a loud roar came from the sky, and a massive passenger plane was plummeting toward the beach. George quickly ran towards the neighbor's villa. Afterward, he informed Amanda about the situation, mentioning that even the satellite phones were unusable, suggesting that their satellites might have been destroyed by hackers. In an absurd turn of events, a plane crashed right in front of him. Amanda looked utterly bewildered. Just then, a piercing noise echoed through the sky, seemingly audible from every corner of the world. The pain of everyone only subsided after the noise disappeared. Amanda returned home with her children, and everyone began to discuss what had actually happened. If it was indeed a war, what preparations should they make? Suddenly, Amanda recalled a visit to a mall the day before, where a man had bought a lot of canned food and bottled water, appearing to be making preparations. Based on the description of his appearance, George confirmed that the man with the denim hat was Kevin, who had worked on his house renovations. Clay returned home and brought flyers dropped by drones. The writing on them was unreadable to everyone. However, the brother recognized the cover, which depicted the American apocalypse, as something he had seen in a game. George questioned, wondering why they would use flyers to publicize it, especially in incomprehensible Arabic text. In the end, the couple decided to take their children to the sister's house in New Jersey for refuge. However, this meant they had to traverse the city of New York. George believed that the city was undoubtedly very dangerous at the moment, but Amanda paid little attention to George's advice. The whole family got into the car and took the highway, but they were forced to stop not far along the road. They saw the road ahead filled with white Teslas, each car without a driver, displaying autonomous driving on the screens. Amanda got out to check and found that each car had no drivers inside, and the screens showed autonomous driving. Just then, Clay saw a car approaching from behind and was about to stop and inquire. Amanda sensed something was wrong and immediately drove away. Another car rushed towards them, but they managed to evade it in time, ensuring the family's safety. In the end, the family reluctantly returned to the villa. That night, Amanda asked George about the reason for his arrival. George mentioned receiving a call from a friend, a prominent figure in the business world who often handled defense projects at the Pentagon. This friend was the most powerful person he had ever met. Once, when the friend was drunk, he mentioned attending a meeting of an evil organization whose goal was to control the world. Initially, George thought it was a joke, but yesterday, the friend suddenly approached him, asking for help in transferring a large sum of money. George asked what was wrong, and the friend just said he needed to leave for a while. George believed that the friend must know some inside information, but even such influential people were only warned a day in advance, proving that the situation was indeed severe. On the other side, Clay and George's daughter were chatting by the pool when suddenly a group of flamingos took over the entire pool. As the two were surprised, a roar resounded once again, shattering all the windows of the villa. The next morning, the brother suddenly began coughing up blood, and his teeth inexplicably started falling out. Amanda's daughter was also missing. George suddenly thought of Kevin, the one who had stocked up on food in advance. Perhaps he might have some medications to treat these illnesses. He and Clay drove to Kevin's house with their son, while Amanda and George's daughter entered the forest to search for the missing girl. They found Kevin, but he kept his distance from them as if suspecting them of being thieves. Clay admitted that they came to seek some medication, but Kevin, upon hearing the symptoms of the child losing his teeth, bizarrely believed that it was a disease triggered by the noise, similar to the microwave weapon incident in Cuba. Combining this with the recent recall of Russian staff from Washington, he thought it was the prelude to a war. Despite their pleas, Kevin outright refused. Moreover, he mocked George, noting how different his current state was compared to before, and yet, he remained so naive. Clay offered $1,000 in cash, pleading with old Kevin to help save his son. However, Kevin coldly told them to leave. It was at this moment that George pulled out a gun, pointing it at Kevin, expressing that they needed the medicine at any cost. In an attempt to ease the conflict, Clay positioned himself between the two, admitting they had no other options and the roads were closed, communication cut off. Kevin was the only one who could save his son. In the end, Kevin reluctantly took the money and provided them with a bottle of anti-radiation medicine. Before the two left, Kevin revealed a piece of information: this might all be the handiwork of South Korea. Clay showed the flyers from the drones, thinking it was a cyber attack launched by a Middle Eastern terrorist organization. He had heard similar stories from friends before, but the flyers were written in Korean. The US had made enemies worldwide, and this might be a joint effort by some enemies to play tricks. George told Clay after getting into the car that he had a feeling the current situation seemed like the beginning of a comprehensive invasion. George's main client worked in the Defense Department, and he had spent a lot of time researching cost-benefit analyses of military actions. There was a project that frightened his client, as it could undermine a country from within through a simple three-stage strategy. The first stage involved isolation, cutting off communication and transportation to paralyze the target. The second stage aimed to create simultaneous chaos through secret attacks and false information, destroying their defense capabilities and overwhelming them with unbearable defensive pressure, rendering their weapon systems useless against their own armed forces. Without clear enemies or motives, people would begin to turn on each other. By the third stage, a political coup and civil war would naturally occur until the internal strife completely destroyed the country. This plan was considered the most efficient method of destabilizing a nation because when the target country reached a certain level of chaos, it would collapse on its own. The person behind this crisis wanted the United States to solve the problem itself. Meanwhile, Amanda found the mysterious little cabin and discovered bicycle tire tracks on the ground. Turning back, she saw a large group of deer surrounding who was frightened and frozen in place. As a strong stag approached, Amanda stood in front of her, shouting desperately, attempting to drive away the wild deer. However, the deer simply stared at them with wide eyes. Seeing the deer scared away, the two finally breathed a sigh of relief. Following the bicycle tracks, they continued to search for the whereabouts of the children. A horrifying scene made George's daughter stop in her tracks. In the distance, the central part of the city was shrouded in mushroom-shaped smoke, accompanied by continuous explosions and gunfire, confirming George's speculations had started coming true. In the end, the girl discovered an underground bunker in a secluded estate. It stored ample food and water, as well as an underground fortress to withstand nuclear explosions. It seemed that someone had prepared for the impending disaster well in advance.